So welcome, everyone. So I'm Lindsay Love. I'm the Senior Director of the Office of Undergraduate Academic Affairs, and we're really glad to have you here today. This is a webinar about academic well-being and the Office of Undergraduate Academic Affairs, resources for academic success. And just so everyone knows, this session is being recorded, and I'm sure it will be shared out to you later so that if don't feel like you have to actively be taking notes. If someone says something wonderful, you can go back and watch the webinar. And of course, you can reach all of us after this session through email is probably the best way. I'm going to allow the panelists to take a moment to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with the left of my screen, which is Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan Sandbury. I'm the Associate Director for the Office of Undergraduate Academic Affairs. I've been with William & Mary for just about almost 6 years now. And so I'm excited to move into this office and talk to you all a little bit more about kind of what we do from the advising side of the house.
Colleen, you're next on the screen.
Alrighty. Hi, my name is Colleen Rogers. I am the Assistant Director for Academic Wellbeing. We are on the student affairs side of academic support for the university. It's nice to meet everyone.
Brooke.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brooke Wilkinson. I'm a graduate student here at William & Mary, and I am also a graduate assistant for the TutorZone, which is under the umbrella of Academic Wellbeing.
And Sabrina, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, go for it. If you're silent, then you don't have to. Silence speaks of volume, doesn't it? Sorry, you'll have to bear with me, all of you. Okay, so again, thanks for being here. The overview today is I'm going to give, after this, I'll have each of our participants talk a little more about what their office does. I have a few prompts I wanted to get them to ask them first. Then there have been questions submitted from current parents, about 8 of them. So I will pose those questions to the panelists and let them respond. And then I believe we will have a bit of time at the end. So at that time, you can put in the Q&A some additional questions and we'll open up to the panel. So I'll start by asking Colleen, if you could give us an overview of your office and what you do, or if either of you, Brooke or Colleen, want to handle that.
Sure, I'd love to. So Academic Wellbeing handles a lot of academic things, obviously, for the Dean of Students office, as well as a lot of general support. So we are the office that helps students in academic difficulty. Sometimes this comes up in an academic status, such as academic well-being or academic probation. I mention it because no one expects their student to end up on probation until it happens. But if it does, we're here to support them. We also handle a lot of other processes for the university, like processing withdrawals, as well as re-enrollment if your student leaves for a time and then comes back to the university. We also run the TutorZone, which is our free peer tutoring service at William & Mary. We offer one-on-one sessions as well as group tutoring and academic coaching as well. So that is weekly support to help your students stay on track and learn important organizational and time management skills. Our office is also the one that your student will come to if an unforeseen emergency comes up. So those are classified as like someone has been hospitalized or there is an unfortunate death in the family. Your student would come to us for assistance communicating with professors. That does not include like I have the flu or I have a doctor's appointment, but we are there for those big things that are going to come up. Hopefully not, but they might. And then generally we provide a lot of one-on-one meeting support to students. So they generally come to us if they have a issue or challenge that they don't know how to approach, or they don't know what office is the best office to assist them with that. So we do a lot of meeting with students and then referring them out to other offices, whether that be an academic department, another department in student affairs, or the Office of Undergraduate Academic Affairs. We also send a fair amount of folks over there. But generally, we just are here to make sure that your student feels supported and that they have all the resources they need to successfully take on this academic journey.
Nathan, if you don't mind talking to us a little bit about the Office of Undergraduate Academic Affairs.
Sure. So the Office of Undergraduate Academic Affairs, which is just easier to call OUAA for the purposes of repeatedly saying that, but we're really similar to Academic Wellbeing in that we're a hub for a lot of different things that students may need. We primarily support students in academic planning, and that's through working with faculty advisors and helping to sort of support and match students with faculty advisors. We also have a professional advising team here through our office that can support students in general academic planning, navigating academic policies, major exploration, helping getting connected to things, extra support academically. And then we also have advisors for things like fellowships, national fellowships and scholarships too, to help them kind of think about themselves as an academic being here on campus. But we also spend a lot of time helping them make connections too. So if they're struggling with courses or trying to figure out how to fit everything in, and they need to kind of take a look at getting extra support, we can send them to Academic Wellbeing. Dean of Students in general is super helpful for students, and then helping the faculty advisors get connected to things too. So we're kind of a multifaceted place for students to come to kind of plan around their academics in general.
And I just want to remind the parents and audience, I will go to the Q&A at the end. So I'm going to go through all our set questions first. I see some people are putting things in there. I will cover them, but at the end, toward the end. I'm going to open it up to all three of you. Do you have any key messages that parents can relay to their students in regard to the work of your office? So now that they've heard, after this presentation, they put a face with a name, what should they be telling their students? What's a key thing they need to know about your office that they should go back and tell their children?
Happy to kind of jump in on that one first and just say, and I think probably everybody else on the panel might agree too, is to come our way at any point. So don't just wait until students are in crisis, until it's hit a point where maybe it feels a little unmanageable, that they can check in with us really at any time. They can check in with their faculty advisor at any time and kind of check in with folks to see how things are going along the way, instead of kind of waiting maybe until they feel like it's at a point where they where it's just a little bit more of an emergency. So we're here to help. We're here to help anytime. I think I can safely say that for everybody who's on the panel. So just make sure that when they're starting to think about things like they're midway through the semester, they're looking at declaring a major and they want to know what to do, like they should just come and find somebody in our office to kind of come and check in at any point to kind of get started. So I think for us, that's key. Early and often. We're happy to see them.
So I would echo the same, early and often. Our office would rather have a conversation about resources and different skills than a probation conversation the next semester. We're happy to help them through probation as well, but if we can catch that early, that's always the goal. With our tutoring services, I would also love for students to know that you do not have to be in D or F range to use tutoring. 80% of the students that used tutoring last semester had above a 3.0 GPA. It is not just for folks that aren't doing well. The majority of students that use tutoring at William & Mary are folks that have a B or an A- and want to get that A. So I would highly encourage students to schedule tutoring appointments, even if it's just to make sure they're on the right track with understanding the material. And that can also help later down the line when tutoring scheduling gets a little bit more hectic after midterms, when everyone realizes they need help. So coming early and scheduling those appointments, and also knowing that it doesn't mean that you're doing badly if you're going to tutoring.
Sure. And I'd like to just give a little bit of an overview about what the TutorZone does. I saw in the Q&A some questions about it. So overall, our tutoring center is completely free. It became free in October thanks to a generous donation from the Parents Fund. And so thanks to that, students are able to utilize it as often as they want. The tutor sessions are 1 hour long. You can also register for an hour and a half if preferred. We have it in most of the classes that are in high demand and most of the classes that are for freshman, sophomore standing. Once we get to junior, senior, we have less offerings because our tutors are all undergraduates. So they are all students who have already taken the class that they're tutoring in and gotten an A or an A- in it. And so obviously as the students get older, they're taking the classes that they would be tutoring in, but the great thing about having tutors that have taken those classes is that they are completely in the know about what you need to do to succeed in that class at William and Mary, compared to if we had graduate student tutors who maybe haven't taken the exact same class. So it's really helpful to have that kind of peer mentorship alongside of the actual tutoring aspect. And the tutoring takes place in SWEM, which is the library. We have tutoring almost every day, and students sign up online, and the link is easy to find if you Google like tutoring for William and Mary, but it's tutorme.wm.edu. And so anything that your students are looking into, we usually have it offered, but if we don't, they are free to reach out to us as well to look into that.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I also wanted to look and thank you for covering how to reach the TutorZone for Megan and or Colleen for the other pieces. How should students reach your office? How do you want them to find you?
I would say for us, email is preferred. That way, like, we are 100% sure we're addressing all of your concerns. Our email is academicwellbeing@wm.edu. So it's just the name of our office at wm.edu. And wellbeing doesn't have a hyphen in it. So it's just academic wellbeing, 2 words. And we aim to get back to all emails within 48 hours, if not before. Yeah, that would be the best way to get in contact with us.
Yeah, super similar for our office. We have a couple options. Certainly email is a great way to have access to multiple people in our office can kind of take a look at those. So ours is academicaffairs@wm.edu. And so certainly students can reach out that way. They can also visit our website and they can book directly with a professional advisor. From our website, which they're more than welcome to do. They don't need to email first, they can just go on and book. And then we also have drop-in hours for this semester. So every Thursday from 1 to 3, we have open hours in our office for shorter advising appointments. So typically, how do I declare a major, or things that maybe take 15 minutes or so. Our appointments are typically 30 minutes. And those are certainly time to get into some more deeper planning for things. So drop-in hours are really meant for kind of that quick question that they just kind of need to get answered. And that's from 1 to 3 again on Thursdays. And then if they need more support after that, we can set them up with an appointment, but certainly email appointments. They're certainly welcome to call too. I don't know how many students still love to talk on the phone, but they can also call our office as well. And that's all on our website for them to access us. So we're pretty accessible. Sorry, I would say too that we typically have next day appointments available pretty often with the advisors.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to go through some of the questions that were submitted ahead of this session. The first one is, do students get copies of academic reports per term? And do parents also get copies?
So I'll talk with that one from our perspective. I'm going to assume by academic reports, you're kind of maybe considering what you might have with students in maybe the K through 12 arena, where you kind of have easy access to a pretty updated grade report for students pretty much all the way through. College is slightly different than that in some ways, is that the student should have access to that through Blackboard, which is the site that faculty use to administer their courses. And so within Blackboard, they should have access to any graded assignments that they've done. And that's typically pretty up to date in there. So they have access to their progress in their courses through Blackboard. Students also will be able to typically see midterm grades around this time. The midterm grading period for this semester is March 6th through this weekend. And so they will then get a checkpoint for midterm that says whether they have an acceptable grade, a marginal grade, or an unacceptable grade. Which they, again, should be aware of if they're kind of paying attention in Blackboard to kind of how those grades are coming in and what that looks like. Our office will reach out to any student who has any courses that fall into that unacceptable or marginal range, just to let them know of all the wonderful resources they have through Academic Wellbeing, TutorZone, coaching. Also, there's a writing resource center through SWEM that they can utilize as well to help kind of give them some suggestions on how they might consider trying to bump their grade that might be in a zone they're just isn't ideal for them at this moment. Also to connect with their faculty advisor, talk to the instructor in the course. We're really there to kind of help support and give them resources to just kind of say, hey, there's where you're at. And here are some things that might help you, and letting them know of the upcoming withdrawal deadline for courses as well, kind of their avenues for that. So they get a check-in point there. Their faculty advisors also made aware, so they can check in with them in this advising period as well. So they should have a lot of kind of checkpoints midway that say, here's kind of where your status is at that. We don't send anything out once your students are 18 and at university. They have access to their academic records. And so certainly I would encourage you to talk to your students if you'd like to kind of be in the loop on kind of where they stand and what that looks like for them, because that's where you'll get access to the information.
Thank you, Megan. Here's the next question. I guess, how do students access the academic advisors that are assigned to each student? So my guess is this is a question about their faculty advisor, but you can interpret however you like.
Sure. So students should know who their academic advisor is going into orientation when they first started as their pre-major advisor. They can also access that information in Banner. So it lives in what's called their student profile. So they can see all things about themselves, transcripts, degree works, their faculty advisor, grades, things like that. Through Banner. They can also see it on degree works itself, which is the mechanism that's used to audit. So it looks at what they've completed so far in their requirements and where they're at, which they should be checking lots. They should always be checking that to kind of see where they're at. And so their faculty advisors listed there. And then every semester, there's this period where we're in right now, which is the advising period. It's typically the 2 weeks leading up to registration. And generally, their advisors should at least be checking in with them at that point, and they should also be checking in with them as often as they'd like to, but certainly during this period to kind of get up to date about registration and what the next semester looks like, and making sure they're on track and that courses make sense for them, the course load makes sense for them for either their intended major as a pre-major advisor, or eventually they will then be connected with a major advisor once they declare, and they'll choose a major advisor to work with, and that faculty will help keep them on track in their major all the way up to graduation. So certainly they should be making pretty consistent appointments with them, and certainly at the very least checking in with them around this time leading up to registration. And then certainly they can always make appointments with advisors in our office as well, and they can do that at any time. So they have access to us as well. Will that answer the question, I hope?
Is there a dean specifically for first-year students?
So our dean on the student affairs side is just generally the dean of students. So she serves the entire undergraduate and graduate communities. On the student affairs side, there is not a specific first-year dean. We do have the student transition and engagement programs office, which does help with a lot of those transition pieces for first-year students. But as far as deans go, there is just one dean of students. I know that on the academic side of the house, there is a dean for like undergraduate education, but maybe Megan can speak a little bit more on what that academic side looks like.
Yeah, I would say that along the same lines, we have the Dean of Arts and Sciences kind of through our mechanism, through our side of the house. Business school has a dean, school of ed has a dean. I wouldn't say there's probably any that are specifically for first-year students. So they kind of cover the gamut of all the students that are on campus. And then, as Colleen said, there's a step office that works specifically with first-year students, and their transition and programming related to that. Yeah.
Thank you. When will the complete fall 2022 dean's list be published?
I think it's up. I checked yesterday. And so it looked like it was updated as of the 8th of March. So I don't know if somebody had a specific person they were looking for on that list, but if you go search dean's list on our website, it should be up to date for fall 2022.
So I'll open this up to all three of you, and you've answered this in some ways, but a parent posed the question: what are the levels or layers of support available to students?
I can start that off by talking about our care report system. So the Dean of Students Office manages the care report system, which is where members of the William & Mary community, faculty, staff, students, but also family members are able to submit a report if there is some sort of concern academically, socially, emotionally, etc., for their student or another student. So what happens when these are submitted? They're assigned to a member of the Dean of Students Office or sometimes a residence life staff member if the issue is like a roommate concern or something of that nature. We reach out directly to the student and also to the reporter if that is what is requested, and offer any sort of support the student is looking for. So usually that looks like them coming in to meet with whatever member of the dean of student staff the care report was assigned to, and kind of troubleshooting from there, figuring out what campus resources are appropriate, whether that is the counseling center talking with student accessibility services, which helps with academic accommodations and housing accommodations for students with disabilities, the Center for Student Diversity, or the TutorZone, the Writing Center, different things like that. And we're able to kind of connect them to those different resources that some students might not know are available on campus. We're also here to help them set up things like coaching appointments and things like that to make a plan and stay on track for the semester. That is what that process looks like specifically. And a student having a care report in the system is not something negative. No one besides our staff can see if they have a care report. So there shouldn't be a stigma attached to that, but that is one of our, I guess, alert systems for if there is a concern about a student. But that is, I would say, one of the first levels of care to utilize if there is some sort of situation going on with your student. Other methods of support, we have students are welcome to walk into our office if they are facing a challenge that they don't know how to handle or something like that, or with just like general support and an ear to speak to that isn't necessarily someone at the counseling center. We also have the counseling center, which is a fantastic resource to use. And then there are various like student groups and different things like that that students can find support in with their peers. The Center for Student Diversity is also incredibly helpful because they offer so much programming to make students feel supported and welcomed on campus.
Thank you for that good answer, Polly. And what is the process if a student is struggling academically and socially? You might have covered some of that.
So I would say, sorry, I kind of jumped the gun on answering with the care report information. That is likely going to be one of the first things that someone would do if they're struggling academically. My other response is always to reach out to the professor. The professors are there to help the student learn. When I say reach out, I mean the student should be reaching out to the professors because they're going to be that first level of support within that individual class, because professors make their own policies and whatnot for that course. There's always the option of going to the department chair if there is a large issue, and that information is located on the website in each specific department's page. When students have academic concerns, those care reports are often routed to our office, and we can connect them with resources. If something happens where they need to withdraw from a course, we can guide them through withdrawing, or if they have to withdraw after the deadline, we can work with them for that as well. For social concerns, those are usually routed to anyone in the dean of students office, or sometimes, like I said, residence life, because if it's a roommate concern, that kind of falls in their domain to be able to provide that support to students within their residence halls. Otherwise, we also advise students to go talk to student leadership and development, because they are very good at helping students find those kind of niche student organizations that might meet some of their interests, where they can find other students that they'll get along with really well that could help with some of those social concerns.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to cover some of the questions that haven't been answered in the Q&A, and I'll just read through them, and then whoever can answer it best, feel free to jump in. A parent says that their son needs tutoring for one of their courses beyond what is offered through the tutoring center. How do they go about finding a private tutor?
Sure. So that's not really something that we address in our office in terms of finding an outside tutor. We are able to offer tutoring for the majority of classes. If if we do not offer tutoring in that class, then we recommend that the student reaches out to their professor and meets with them during office hours, and they'll be able to connect them with resources and address any issues that your student is having in order to kind of help them out. A lot of departments also have their own tutoring services or graduate students who are able to address student needs if they're not met in the.
Thank you. Is there a special place for students to talk to or go to if they're a transfer student to William?
So I would say, I mean, for transfer students, they're always welcome to come to our office and kind of talk through, because their academic plan and path may look very different than a new student coming in. And so they're always welcome to come to our office, and our advisors here, you know, work with transfer students and planning and what that looks like for them and their resources. And then if they're sort of transitioning newly to William and Mary, then obviously the STEP office also can help them and get them connected. They have a lot of good opportunities through the STEP office as well that can work with students as that's, you know, the transition from where they came from to here. That's a big piece of it. And so our offices, along with Academic Wellbeing, can help sort of support those students. So they're welcome to come to really any of the offices on campus and get any kind of resource that they need from folks.
I would also like to add, like Megan said, specifically with the STEP office, the student transition office. I know that last semester they did offer some programming specifically aimed at transfer students, which can be especially helpful in finding that community of folks that have had a similar experience in the past to them, whether that is transferring from a four-year institution or a community college level. Being able to find those folks that have had similar experiences can be really helpful and comforting for transfer students. So they've offered some of those opportunities, and I believe we'll be continuing to.
Awesome, thank you. So Karen is saying that their son is a freshman and they've had difficulty getting into classes that they wanted because the classes seemed to fill up so fast, and this even the second semester it was also a bit challenging.
Yes, there are lots of opportunities for students, but the schedule is pretty tight. And so I will say that's something that the Dean's Office and Arts and Sciences specifically is kind of looking at, to take a look at what our course offerings are, what does that look like, how do we adjust them, you know, based on need and what students have registered for. And so it's a continuous process, I would say, looking at that to make sure that we're trying to meet all the needs for students, knowing that they want to have the opportunity to maybe explore some things with a kind of a lower level course without challenge of maybe a 300 or 400 level course, which may be what's available, particularly in the first part of registration. I know it's stressful. Registration is always stressful, and I have to get up really early in the morning, and it's a whole process. And so as much patience as they can have is super helpful. Things do change between that first priority registration window all the way through schedule adjustment, all the way coming in. Certainly the further along you get in your academic and social, and with your social class specifically, you'll have earlier access to courses and registering for courses. And so that will lessen over time, but I know those first few years especially can be pretty tricky, trying to make sure you get everything you need and try to explore new courses and try to explore some major things. It's a lot to kind of juggle. So again, I know we'll probably say it a lot, but certainly reach out. Like if the student is feeling like going into registration is especially stressful, their faculty advisor can certainly help them. We can help them, Dean of Students can help them. And sometimes it just does take a little finagling, but I will say that we're looking at it. We're I'd say every year we look at it as from the Dean's office and kind of reassess how to improve that process and try to lower the stress levels a little bit.
Thank you, Megan. I think this is for you too. Are there sessions or seminars for students on how to plan for fall course selection?
So that's typically what students would meet with their faculty advisor for during this academic advising period. So there aren't specific sessions necessarily, but they are, you know, supposed to be meeting with their faculty advisor to make sure they go over that, to get some guidance on what the next semester would look like for them. And if they find that they're paired with a faculty advisor that Initially for pre-major, we match students based on kind of what they thought they wanted to do when they were coming in. And so that may change over time, and that is totally fine. That happens. And so if they find they need extra support or different support, they're not limited to just their faculty, like assigned faculty advisor. They certainly can reach out to faculty in other departments and kind of get some questions answered from them. And they can reach back out to us to get some sort of, if they need, like, if they just don't have any idea at this point, which is totally fair. Sometimes students think they want one thing and then kind of go back and try to figure that out. We can help them kind of look at that from a broad range too. So certainly they have lots of resources at their disposal. There isn't a session specifically for planning. Excuse me, although we did host kind of a pit stop advising that students can drop into too, that serves that purpose, a kind of check-in point where all of our advisors were available. So there are things out there. There's lots of things out there. That's part of the balance, is trying to figure out how to get to all the things and use all the resources. But certainly they are there to help them with the plan.
Thank you. If a student retakes a course, how will the GPA be calculated, or I'm guessing impacted? And is it the average of the 2 scores or the last score?
So if a student fails a course here at William & Mary, they can retake the course. That's the only circumstance in which you can retake courses. You have to either have withdrawn from the course, so you have a W, or you have an N failing grade as an F. Anything other than that, you can't retake the course here at William & Mary. If you do retake a course, both grades are factored in your GPA. So both grades stand and both grades are factored equally into the overall GPA.
Someone also was asking about the limited number of courses over the summer, and I will throw out recently, the provost actually did a survey that went out to all faculty to kind of get a sense of what summer courses they might be available to teach. And I think they're also surveying all students about what courses they would like to see over the summer. So there is some active work on increasing the opportunities for summer registration. Here's the next question. My son applied and was accepted to be a business major. Are there steps he has to take to formally declare?
Nope. So my previous life here at William & Mary, I worked at the business school. So I can say that once they are admitted as a business major, that declaration process is part of the business school application. So once they're admitted, the business school will declare them. And then the student will work directly with Susan Granger over there at the business school to help get set up for their first semester as a major in the business school. So there's nothing else they need to do. They've done the work to apply, they've gotten admitted, and they're good to go.
Thank you. This one maybe is a comment, but I guess you can answer. This person says our students need to be able to be, I think it's a comment to Megan's comment. It just said that students need to learn how to speak on the phone if they want to succeed in this world. We all agree. So I guess you could encourage them to sometimes give us a call. So they are asking, where do I send my daughter's POA and HIPAA forms? Does anyone, and I'm also supposed to throw out, if we can't answer it, if you email families@wm.edu, they will get the answer for you, but does anyone know the answer to this question?
I believe for at least the HIPAA forms, they go to the student health center, like where their like various records are also sent. For like academic releases, judicial releases, and financial releases, your student can go to where they fill in their personal information, like their emergency contact and things like that, and add the individual they would like to have any of those releases, and put in your email, and you'll be sent a passphrase. So when you get that passphrase, you'll be able to call and give that passphrase to speak about a variety of things related to your student. And the place they'll do that is personalinfo.wm.edu. They will be receiving emails about this as well. Every semester they have to update their emergency contact information to make sure it's up to date. So they're able to update their releases at any time, but they will be prompted to go to that page prior to the beginning of next semester. So that again is personalinfo.wm.edu, and then they just go to the release tab. And that is for academic, financial, and judicial releases.
Thank you. And there's a question about final exams. If a student has an A, does that mean they don't have to take the final exam, or does it depend on the teacher?
That depends on the class. So each professor builds their syllabus in their own way. And so that may be the case in some courses and it may not. So this is just a good general rule for students. Always read the syllabus. Classes typically go over them the first day at least, but that is their guide to that course and all of the rules and regulations that are a part of it. So class attendance and grades and percentages and all of that stuff is included in that syllabus. It's super important that they read through it probably multiple times since they're going to have a few courses they're going to need to manage. It's the course schedule, it's the assignment dates, all of that kind of stuff. So it just depends on the course, how they've structured that. Some let exams drop, some don't. It's just make sure that they double check that syllabus to be sure.
My student told me the grade report from the fall semester is not yet final. How long does it take to receive the final grade?
Typically grades are, I mean, there's a deadline for faculty to submit their final grades. Sometimes students do take incompletes on courses, potentially, if they've, typically that's sort of in more extreme circumstances where they've maybe missed, one or two assignments and need to finish up, something happens, there's an emergency at some point during the semester, and they were able to work with their faculty to get an incomplete. Sometimes that's the case. And then there may be an extension on when they get a grade for that particular course, but the grade should be final for the fall. I think the deadline is January 3rd for all faculty to get their grades submitted. So certainly feel free, like if you wanted to have the student reach out to us directly and kind of help navigate that, happy to do that. You can give them our email address.
Thank you. Is there a dean for transfer students?
I think this one kind of falls into the same sort of, I'm sorry, Colleen, I didn't mean to hop in, but it sort of falls into the same category as first year students. There isn't necessarily a specific dean for that, but certainly everybody's willing to, help, and certainly the STEP office and kind of those resources we covered before.
Well, I know a student will declare their major after a certain number of credits, maybe getting past it. What about a minor? Does a student need to declare a minor, and if so, when?
A student only needs a major to graduate from William and Mary, and so they can double major or they can major in minor, but they don't necessarily have to. And sometimes we will help students kind of come around to that feeling of they don't necessarily need to do all of the things to be super successful and kind of managing that expectation. They can declare a minor. Each department might be slightly different. Some departments prefer that you have the minor courses completed before you officially declare. Some let you declare and want to approve those courses before you start on them. So that is something you want to probably have the student check with the department they're kind of interested in doing a minor in to make sure. There's a form they fill out and then they can declare that. And it's certainly probably not something they're going to declare in their first year by any means. They would wait until they're closer to declaring their major and then figure it out from there. So it's not necessary, but I would get connected to any department they're interested in majoring or minoring in, as soon as they can.
Are there any financial resources available for my child if they're looking to take classes outside of their regular schedule or if they're hoping to study abroad?
So as far as financial resources go, I would say that is probably a great question for financial aid, because things with summer classes and taking classes elsewhere are kind of on a case-by-case basis. So it's hard to have an overarching answer to things like that. As far as studying abroad, the Reeve Center for the International Education on Campus, which helps with international students as well as studying abroad, has a lot of different resources and scholarships that they can help connect students with for specific resources for studying abroad and international education. So they would likely be able to help figure out if there's something specific for a specific study abroad program, for a major, things like that, that could assist financially with studying abroad.
Thank you. I think this question is there more than one biology professor maybe that teaches the same class? It says my student had to drop this one course this last semester due to issues with the professor.
So it depends. Sometimes the same professors teach the same introductory courses, but that could vary semester by semester. So make sure that the your student checks the schedule for the following semester, or sometimes there's more sections offered in one semester than another, and then that gives them a little bit more flexibility on who's teaching. So it may just depend on the introductory course, but yes, you will see probably sometimes similar faculty teaching some of those entry level kinds of courses early on. But again, certainly have them reach out to somebody at one of our offices if they have some concerns about being able to accomplish that course and like what might be the best way to do that.
I think this question is, how can we engage with the William and Mary academic coach?
Sure. So the academic coaching program is run through Academic Wellbeing. Those are graduate students that meet weekly with students who have been either referred to our program or have come in and visited our office, and we've determined together that coaching is the right avenue for them to take. Those students are generally referred through a few different offices, largely athletics, student accessibility services, and care support services. But students are also more than welcome to come into our office and have a conversation with any of our staff members about the challenges they're facing, specifically if it's organization, time management, figuring out how to maybe communicate with professors or access different resources on campus. Our coaches can be really helpful, and all they have to do is say they're interested, let me know what kind of support they're looking for, and if there's a specific area that they're hoping to grow. And I will assign them to a coach and they can start meeting with them weekly. We try to make it a simple process, but it is a relatively new program, so we're working on that. But we are happy to meet with any student who is interested in academic coaching and get them connected to that program. We also have time management consultants in the TutorZone. So if someone is looking for more of a one-time appointment on how to manage their time effectively, that is also a great resource to use.
So there's some wonderful resources. Pop quiz. What is the GPA needed for the Dean's List?
3.6. They have to have at least 12 graded credits, and then a 3.6 grade point average during that semester.
Awesome, Nathan. When a student reaches out to a professor or an academic advisor, what is the anticipated response time? What should it look like from the professor or student advisor? Is it usually 1 day, 2 weeks, a week?
Everybody's favorite answer, it depends. It depends on the faculty. Some faculty are teach more classes than others, or traveling or doing various things. And so I would say, certainly if you do not hear back from a faculty advisor, I would say within a week that's something you might want to either follow up again, or follow up with another person either within that department, or certainly our office can help sort of field that too. But typically I would say our faculty are pretty responsive to their advisees, and it's generally maybe 1 to 3 days, but it might take, they have heavy Tuesday, Thursday classes. It might take them a little bit of time, but certainly they should be hearing from them certainly within a week or so. But some things happen, that faculty go on leave, or they are on sabbatical, and it takes a little bit of navigating sometimes to figure that out. But certainly if they're here and they're active on campus, it should be a few days, a week at most.
Thank you. Do you know if there are going to be more Spanish classes? There's a rumor, they've heard that sometimes students have to wait all the way to their senior year to get into a Spanish class.
It shouldn't be until senior year. That's, I guess, it's another thing to consider early and often. If your student has to complete the foreign language proficiency, they should really try and get to that as soon as they can. Depends on, they could take anywhere from 1 to potentially 4 courses over their course year to complete that. So certainly I'm guessing you're asking because you're already thinking about that, which is a good thing. I don't think there's anything slated for the summer necessarily to be additional. I think there's 2 sections maybe of each 101 and 102. I have to go back and check. I haven't heard more about more sections being open for the summer, but certainly they're aware Hispanic Studies is one of the more popular courses for students to do, because typically a lot of high schools maybe have offered that and they want to finish up to get their foreign language proficiency here with Hispanic Studies. So we're aware that that's something that we need to kind of take a look at every semester, but I don't think they're going to add any more necessarily for the summer specifically.
Thank you. What are the pros and cons of withdrawing from a course?
I would say that kind of depends on what your student's end goal is, because if they're looking to go to a specific medical school, they might have to explain why they withdrew from that particular course. Otherwise, in most situations, I would say that if they do not think they're going to pass the course, a withdrawal looks better than an F. A withdrawal also does not factor into your GPA, whereas an F definitely does. So I would say that taking the withdrawal is not something to be afraid of. I have a course in my undergraduate career that I should have taken a withdrawal on and didn't. So if someone has questions about whether or not to withdraw from a particular course, I would definitely encourage them to come to talk to either our office or OUAA. They just need to be aware of that deadline. I believe this semester it's March 27th to withdraw from those courses. If it's after that date, they could submit a petition to the Committee on Academic Status, but that could be a whole webinar in itself. There are definitely options and supports for students trying to figure out if they want to withdraw from a particular course. Withdrawing is also one of those circumstances where you can take the course again. So if it's really not going well and your student does not believe they're going to pass the course, I would say that withdrawing is definitely something to discuss with different university staff members.
Thank you. Do you know what William & Mary does to assist students with securing off-campus housing when on-campus housing is not available, specifically for a junior?
Yeah, I probably the same thing you're gonna say, Colleen, which is that's typically we don't normally wade into the housing resources, but so much I'd really encourage them to reach out to Residence Life and get connected with somebody there. And they probably have resources that they can send to that student who's looking for off-campus housing. I do know that at one point, William & Mary did have a website that kind of hosted available options. I'm not sure if that still exists, but it's certainly something to search for on our website as well. But certainly getting connected with somebody in housing specifically, because see, there's a couple housing questions in there, so it's not necessarily our purview, but certainly reach out to them and see more information you can get from their department. They've got lots, so they'd be a great resource.
One of our colleagues just put their information in the chat. The next question is, my child couldn't get into the major he wanted, but was accepted for a minor in that area. He ended up declaring another major. He's now hoping to change his major junior year, for which having a minor in the same area might be helpful, correct? Sounds like he might be having a hard time getting maybe in contact with his academic advisor, and apparently his major advisee in the area. Oh, because he's declared a different, getting advising for that opposite major. How can he get guidance?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Lindsay, thank you. I'm going to assume this is probably a business school situation, since typically, and for arts and sciences, if you want to declare a major, you certainly can declare a major and go from there. So I'm under the assumption that it's business school. Feel free to drop something in the questions there if it's not. Certainly they can work with their advisors over at the business school specifically. And so typically if they're not quite ready to start the major in the business school, they've been offered a minor, it means they're kind of taking a look to make sure that they could be successful moving all the way up into a major for the business school. So certainly you can reach out to the advisors of the business school directly, and I can drop that information, or you can go to mason.wm.edu and that contact information is there as well. And certainly if they want help just general planning and thinking about that, our advisors here can help them kind of navigate that too. Like what's my parallel plan? How do I, make that work if I want to move up into a major later? And can I turn this other major into a minor or double major? Like there's lots of different kind of options. So certainly we can help them kind of look at that broadly too and do some exploration there.
Thank you. And along that same theme, can students complete a business minor without being part of or applying to the business school?
If they want to be a major or a minor, they need to apply for both of those things. So there's a limited number of seats in the business school for both the major and the minor, so they would apply for both.
What's the typical amount of credits a student should be taking per semester, and what's the maximum amount that's allowed?
So I feel free to jump into, Colleen. Typically, I mean, students have to at least have 12 credits. So somewhere between 12 and 15 is pretty typical for students to stay on track to graduate with their 120 credits. 18 is the maximum that students can do every semester. And so if they are considering going over 18, they need to apply and petition for what's called an overload. And typically, you know, we don't really encourage students to do that. It's really looked at on a case-by-case basis, and they certainly hardly ever approve for over 19 credits typically. And again, Colleen, you are much more, I think, in that land than I am, but like it's just a matter of making sure your students stay balanced and don't take on more than they can handle. And as soon as they figure out that that's not working for them, to get in touch with somebody, and certainly academic well-being, to see what their options are. Don't wait on that and try to push, you know, more credits on top of that. So 12 to 15 and 18 is really max.
I would say also something to consider, students sometimes can petition for an underload, which means taking less than 12 credits. Those are usually really extenuating circumstances, like something major has come up and a student cannot take the regular course load. With petitions for both underloads and overloads, those are typically not heard by the Committee on Academic Status until the end of the summer. So if your student decides to submit a petition for an overload or an underload, they likely will not hear back for a number of months at this point. So that is just something to be aware of. Not hearing back immediately does not mean it's automatically denied. So there's no need to panic there. But those things are largely decided closer to the semester. Also a note that students that are on academic probation are not permitted to take more than 16 credits, because we really want them to be able to focus on those courses to bring themselves out of that probationary status. For probation, you have to have both a certain number of credits based on how long you've been at the college and a certain GPA. So that together goes to say whether or not a student is in good academic standing. And if a student is not in good academic standing, we want to put them in the best possible position to get back in good academic standing. So that is why that 16 credit limit is in there, so they can make sure that they can focus on all of the courses they're registered for. And info about different academic statuses is available on our website if you just type in continuance. It's kind of a sliding scale, so that is a lot to cover for the amount of time we have left, but there's a lot of good information there. And if anyone has questions about that, feel free to reach out to Academic Wellbeing at wm.edu, and we're happy to help.
Colleen, can a student take call 400 before call 300 due to availability?
So typically the call 400 course, which is part of the call requirements, is meant to be the capstone course, so sort of the culmination course that you take here, which should really be done as far along as possible. There's no real mechanism for stopping a student taking it. I mean, they don't have to take them in order. I guess I should start there. So you don't have to take a 300, then a 400. You could take them in the same semester. And certainly if availability means they get into their 400, I would say if they can try and wait until, you know, at least the spring semester of their junior year, you want to have a lot of that coursework, and typically there are prerequisites involved to getting to that call 400. But certainly if 300 or 400 is available before a 300 and that makes sense for them, they can certainly do that, and nobody's going to kick them out.
I'm very happy to say we got through all of the Q&As. We're almost done with our time, but if anyone has a pressing question, we could probably handle one more. We can stick it in the Q&A or wait a minute. Good job, somebody. My student is considering taking 6 credits for an overseas trip in early January. The 6 credit hours will be part of the fall semester. Oh, I have a prepaid Virginia 529 plan. Who can I call to discuss the tuition payment?
Financial aid. Student accounts, they're typically the ones who help you navigate that. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that. I don't know enough about that to speak confidently, so they're definitely the ones you want to get in touch with.
Can you withdraw from the course if withdrawing puts you under 12 credits for the term?
So that would put them into an underload, so that would need to go through the Committee on Academic Status. Or if it is a medical situation, there is a separate committee for that. The process for the Committee on Academic Status is submitting a personal statement, which is usually a page, maybe less, explaining the situation and why the student would like to withdraw from that course to put them into an underload. And then the committee automatically contacts the professor for their statement as well. That professor does not see what the student put in their personal statement. And then the committee meets every other week to hear those petitions and decide on them. And it is a group of professors, administrators, representatives from various offices. Generally, underloads for less than like 9 or 10 credits are very hard to come by unless there's a very extenuating circumstance that comes up. But if a student is interested in doing that, they are more than welcome to contact our office and we can walk them through what that process looks like, as well as help them kind of figure out what to put in their personal statement to best articulate their situation.
Thank you. And what's in the chat is what we'll go with and we'll end after that. So if anyone is thinking about something, go ahead and plan on emailing us. We'll help you later. But so the questions that are left in the chat: how are grades from study abroad programs? How do they reflect on students' transcript? And when do students start applying for a junior year abroad program? And who advises them on this?
So if students are considering study abroad, I would have them get in touch with the Reeves Center for National Study and their office. They've got a whole peer advising program and a system that students can go through to explore their options. And they've got lots of opportunities for study abroad and helping students kind of navigate that. And so they can do that really at any point. So I would say if they're considering that, typically they apply the semester before, I believe, for a study abroad program, but the Reeves Center is really the one that they want to reach out to and get connected with. And then depending on the program, some William and Mary led programs have grades that are transferred back as part of the program. And some courses, if they do third party, come back as transfer credits as T's. So some abroad programs have grades and some don't, but that's something that they can certainly navigate when they're investigating where they want to go and what they want to study.
Thank you. So this is the last question. How does William and Mary support summer school? Do they take a course somewhere else, and how does that get transferred back?
So for William and Mary students trying to transfer credits in from another institution, that has to go through the transfer credit coordinator in the registrar's office. So that is a specific person that your student will reach out to. I believe there's a form to get permission to take courses away from William and Mary. It is important to note that all of those courses have to be approved before the student takes them. So always reach out to that transfer credit coordinator first, because you don't want a student to take a course and then it end up not transferring back because they didn't have prior permission. So without a doubt, transfer credit coordinator is your person in the registrar's office, and they'll be able to help with what credits will transfer back into William and Mary and what those credits will count for here.
Getting that. So I want to thank you all for attending the session today. It was really nice talking to you. And I know that the coordinator of this session puts, how to reach us, the different links in the chat. And then you can also Google our offices to email our inboxes if there were additional questions we couldn't answer today. And so I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you. You all had really great questions.